And here we are back again. We are here for another episode, another wonderful interview with another wonderful expert. Today, I get to welcome Mr. Jonmichael Butler, all the way from Jacksonville, Florida. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you, thank you.
I am almost nervous today doing this interview because I'm speaking to an expert, and you guys will find out why in a bit. Um, Jonmichael, you are someone who is a podcaster, right? You have your own podcast.
That's correct. The
So
Multifarious Man podcast.
you get to interview people daily for a living, and here I am interviewing you. So that's why I'm nervous, you guys. But let's get that energy off and let's have some fun here today. Let's get started with
Absolutely.
your backstory because, as you all know, you've been watching interviews as you know up until now. You've been seeing all these wonderful experts, guys. Um, I want you to hear about John Michael's journey, like where he started, what he went to school for, what was his job for many years, and how he is now reinventing himself to make a living online. So I'll give it to you, my dear. Let's take them on the journey.
Okay. That's easy. Backstory. Born and raised in New York City.
Mhm.
So I'm a city boy through and through. Growing up in New York City, in the late 70s and the 80s, went to New York City public school system. My father was a librarian by trade. So when most kids, when you had a sick day or summer vacations where you'd be home or maybe with grandma or something like that, I would be at the library with my father. So learning the Dewey Decimal System, checking people out with the light pen, which was always fun for me, having, checking people's books out, things like that. And, the gift that gave to me was just a love for reading and storytelling. And my father didn't restrict what I read. From his point of view, it was okay. You enjoy reading, go ahead. Read everything. Of course, he wanted me to start in the junior section, the youth section, but I outgrew that quickly. I love mysteries, so for me, I went from reading Encyclopedia Brown, which was an 8-year-old kid detective. There's a series of books to graduating quickly to Agatha Christie. So things along that line. But I would read anything, fiction, nonfiction, biographies, autobiographies. I love sports stories. So even though technically you had to, you could have a youth library card and an adult library card. I had the youth, but because my father worked there, he knew what I was reading, so I could check out whatever I wanted. So from that, I always loved storytelling. I loved movies. I would just watch movies as a kid as much as I could. So I really enjoyed storytelling. I enjoyed, that emotion you get. I think many years ago it was a telephone commercial where someone would call someone and you'd get a little misty eyed. So for me, the exciting part about stories and movies, whether it's a book or it's, something you see on the screen, is that emotional connection. So whatever's happening, I would truly have an emotional connection to it. So I wanted to do that. So as a kid, I wasn't shy, loved performing. So any chance I got, whether it was at church or at school, if there was some kind of play or if there was some sort of program where they needed somebody to read or act out something, I was the first in line. Wanted to do it. So plays I loved. I have, memorizing thing, learning skits, doing characters. I really enjoyed it. And that led up to, in high school doing plays and doing musicals and musical theater. And then finally, I went to City College in New York. So City College of the City University of New York. You usually say to someone, well, where'd you go to school? You go City College. They go, what city? And you go, no, it's actually called City College, CCNY in New York. And they had a wonderful program where I actually, got my degree in communications, film, and theater. So I learned the technical aspect of filmmaking. I learned about editing, learned about cameras. For theater, I learned about how to be a thespian, to, how to actually, the the craft of being a storyteller with your body, with your eyes, acting out on stage, and just learning all the technical aspects. So fast forward, you get out of college, you need to get a job. You take the first job you can get. The aspiring actor in me wanted to be an actor, but I hate auditioning. So if you're an actor and you hate auditioning, you need to figure something else out, because you're gonna have to audition if you're an actor. So I had some some walk-on roles, or you go on these cattle calls and it'd be thousands of people for the same role, or just to be background. And in New York, in the 90s, early 90s, Law and Order was it. They did all of their filming in downtown. So, often you could, be cast just to be someone that's sitting in the jury box, or sitting in the audience, or something like that. So it was fun to do. But again, I didn't like the auditioning part. It was fine when we were in school and you were doing shows, because there was a finite amount of people auditioning, and you usually, if you didn't have a main role, you had some role. And the fact that the school, City College's theater department was really about non-traditional casting. Didn't matter what you looked like, didn't matter where you came from. They didn't care what the role was written for. If you came out and you wanted to be a part of it and you learned about it, you got the opportunity. So that kind of taught me, you see it a lot more. They talk about inclusion. But needless to say, I got a job in a phone center at a bank. 20 years later, I'm still, working in finance. And that's not to say I still didn't do things in my personal life, whether it was regional theater or, really a lot of stuff with churches or organizations, but I really wasn't actually doing it. The stuff that I really wanted to do, whether it's writing or acting. So roughly 5 years ago, I met a friend at work that had a book blog, and she would write about books. And I was like, oh man, I can do that. I know books. I can write about movies. I can write about books. I can write about film. I can recommend things. So that's how it started. Before it became a podcast, it was literally a blog, and it was me telling people my favorite movies, my favorite books, TV shows, networks to watch, and just recommending it. And then one day I just, I had always listened to podcasts, usually technology podcasts or video game podcasts. And I was like, I mean, it doesn't seem that hard. I had the equipment, audio equipment, microphones, things like that I've collected over the years. So one day I sat down and put together an episode. It was pretty easy to get it up and running, once I dug into it to figure out where it was hosted. But I just started talking. And 5 years later, I'm still doing it. And one of the greatest things I love about it is I started reaching out to people I went to school with, people that were still acting, or people I knew locally, and started interviewing people. That's probably the most fun I have. I mean, I can talk about movies all day. I can talk about TV and movies, but actually having a conversation with someone and letting them tell their story about the things they love, or maybe they're doing a show, or maybe they wrote a book, or maybe they're in a band. Any way I can put a spotlight on artists of all types, just the creative arts, visual arts, theater arts, those are the things that drive a culture. It doesn't matter what you have. Science starts with imagination. Business starts with imagination. It starts with you as a kid with a box of Crayolas drawing. So arts is what we need. So for me, it's that excitement and that joy of having a conversation with them and letting them tell their story.
What a beautiful
That's the
thing.
long,
Yeah.
winding road of how we get to today.
What a beautiful thing to take your passion, your childhood passion, and turn it into something profitable today. And your positioning is like perfect for that. Can you guys agree? Like, is Jonmichael's voice the nicest voice, soothing and smooth and inviting, and you're like pulling us in. Just your voice is really perfect for this type of work. Wow. And given all your background. And you said one thing when you started sharing with us. You said your father was a librarian, and many children, like most of the children, would be like on vacation and playing da da da. You were in the library, which as a kid, I don't know how much you enjoyed that fact, but you said it was a gift. And I thought to myself,
Oh, it absolutely was. Yeah.
yeah, I thought to myself, this is so in alignment, because I wrote a book, and in that book, I wrote about things that happened through my childhood, and I call them gifts. And I name all those gifts that every single person gave me, that back then I thought were like horrible things happening to me. But now, in hindsight, when I look back,
Yeah.
it's like, thank God it happened, and thank God for those people giving me those gifts. So I guess that's how you feel too. That's fantastic.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. And and because of it, my children have kind of grow up in that environment. Why my wife and I, we read
yeah,
all the time. It's normal for us to read 4 or 5 books in any given month. She probably reads more than I do, and I read a lot.
yeah, that,
So it's like, whether it's a physical book or an ebook, magazines, it just takes you so many different places, and you can just learn so much.
yeah, yeah. So, have you ever thought of becoming an author?
Yes, and the crazy thing was that, fiction, definitely. I've always been a big fiction fan, and science fiction and fantasy novels is really, and mysteries. So a combination of both. I'm one of those people that I probably have a few thousands of pages of written stuff, but I'm such a perfectionist, and that's my biggest problem. And people I've met who are authors, they said at some point you just have to go with what you have, and uh, you know give it to someone else, because as long as you hold on to it, you're going to keep rewriting, you're going to keep changing, and it's never going to be right, and you're never going to put it out there. So that's the biggest obstacle I need to get past at this point, is to take it and say, you know what, I have the story, I've put it together, now let me put it in someone else's hands,
Mhm.
and let them do something with it at this point. Because if I hold on to it, then it's just a story in my mind. It's not something that's ever been shared with someone, and it's never going to be right as far as I keep holding on to it. So I have to be willing to let it actually go,
Yeah.
and put it out there.
I see so many possibilities for you, my dear. I see Hollywood picking it up and creating movies. I see you being featured on different platforms as an expert, as an author. I see you on the stage speaking, because you definitely have those skills as a public speaker.
That would probably be my biggest dream. That would actually be my biggest dream, is to write a book and then actually adapt the screenplay,
Yeah.
and then whatever happens from there. I mean, but that would be the perfect situation for me, because one, I think there's some amazing, gifted, talented people out there that write original stories directly for the screen. But I also love, movies and TV shows that are developed from existing works. And, to be able to craft something with a rich universe and a rich storyline, and then take that and have that, then adapt it for the screen, would just be amazing. It would kind of be able to tap into all those different things that I loved at a child. And I think, one of the things that COVID, and, being in the lockdown, and some of the things that have changed, I've been fortunate enough to still work, my 9 to 5 job. I'm still doing that, but because I'm home, and not moving about, and, you kind of learn to start to refocus. I think it was an opportunity. I think it was, God sometimes wants you to be still. And by being still, all of a sudden, all these things I learned in school, years ago now became something needed. And it started initially, with our church, where we had to go from being in person to Sunday school to the different ministries to the services to all of a sudden we went 100% online. And now suddenly, yeah, you had technical people in our media ministry that knew kind of do some of those things, but the congregation had to learn how to do it. They had to learn how to conduct Zoom meetings. They had to learn how to, share screens, all these things that we kind of take for granted
Yeah.
for people that do it all the time. You realize that there were so many people out there that had the desire to do it, but they just didn't know where to start. And fortunately, and I don't even say fortunately, it was, God said, you know what? Your gifts that you've been building all these years, now is the time for you to use them. So when, the opportunity, when the deacons and the ministers of the church say, hey, do we need someone that can help? Is there anyone that can help? I raised my hand immediately, and started volunteering, with the different ministries to show people how to do online webinars, online Bible study. And I found it enjoyable and easy. And then being able to tell someone that, hey, you just focus on putting together your program and what you want to do, and I'll help you deal with the technical aspects, and I'll show you how to do that behind the scenes. So that opportunity got, kind of got me to the point was like, yeah, I'm good at this. I know how to do this and I like doing it. People started referring me to friends and family members. And what started with just me doing something for the church turned into me actually, developing something that, is a viable business model where, I'm able to assist people, creators with their webinars, with their Zoom calls, helping people host birthday parties, for family members. I've done a lot of those. And to tell someone that's like, hey, I can help you get this together. You just give me the list of who you want to invite and bring people together for birthday celebrations, 75th birthdays, 60 birthdays. And you realize the need for people to communicate and still interact, even though they're remote. The smiles that you see on people's faces when people are surprised and they get to see their grandkids, they get to see their loved ones, and have an online party and celebrate together. And then you realize that, there's so many people out there that have ideas and they want to do things, but the technical aspect is the thing that they need help with. And here am I have the equipment, I have the experience, and because I'm used to being in front of and behind the camera. And even though I admit when I was in school, I sometimes you didn't want to do the behind the scenes stuff, but that was the greatest one of the greatest gifts I learned at City College is the individuals that took the time to teach me lighting, sound, teaching me how to hang lights, how to design lights, all those different things that you need to do now. So now when you're remote and someone has a show and they need someone with the technical background to actually help them put it together and kind of run it behind the scenes for them so they can focus on being creative, putting something out, reaching out to people, but they don't have to worry about those little things, how it sounds, what type of microphones.
Yeah.
These are the things that I know how to do, and I'm able to help people, you know, get their dream out there. So it's, someone has an idea for doing something, but they're not sure how. So then the question to me is, well, what's possible? And it's up to me to kind of help them navigate to what's possible, what they can do, what's available, and give them ideas. As someone, if you think about something, someone writing a show or writing a play, and they say, how can I do this? How can I do that? I can help answer those technical questions, and it might send them in a direction in terms of, what they write or what they may portray. And, and the fact that it's something I really love, to be able to do something I love and know that people want to pay for this service, was just surprising for me, because I was just like, yeah, I just love doing it. And someone said, yeah, you love doing it. There's nothing wrong, with making a living doing something you love. I'm like, you're providing service, provide the service, give people an option, for something that they don't have to think about. I mean, there's a reason, in my home, do I know how to do some minor things? I can change a faucet, but I'm not a plumber. So, sometimes it makes perfect sense to hire a professional to do something, not because you're lazy, not because you're not capable of doing it on your own, but people have different gifts that they have where they excel at them. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with, if you have a budget for something and you decide to yourself, all right, I'm budgeting this out, I want to put on this webinar, I want to, reach out to all these different people, and to have a space in there to make it professional, to make it so that, when it's just your friends, it's easy. Yeah, you can kind of wing it. But when you're starting to invite other people to your business, when you're inviting people to buy your product, to give them that professional, what they would expect, it kind of makes it easier. And for me, the biggest challenge, of course, and not, I don't see the challenge, is learning how to take it from, this is something I do, to now saying, okay, here are the different services. And it happens from having conversations with people, and people being willing to give me an opportunity, which started from me genuinely wanting to help. So being sincere, being professional, even when you're volunteering. That's one thing I can tell people is, if you're going to volunteer for something, be all in about it. Don't kind of sulk and be like, well, I would have given you my best if you paid me. It's like, look, you volunteered for something, treat it as if it's a job, treat it as if it's professional, and give that person that you're working with that due respect. You'd be amazed at the doors that it opens from there, because every interaction, I feel, is an audition. So you may have volunteered to help someone, or help a church organization, or someone on that came into that room in that webinar, or enjoyed it, someone that came to that party, they may have been thinking about something for their job or something for something else. And they go, you know what? I just met someone that did this, or a friend of mine just had this so and so, and this person, and Jonmichael did it. Last night, I helped, one of the big organizations in our church. It's, for the seniors. They have a really good ministry, and they put together a Valentine program where, these people hadn't seen each other in person in months, maybe a year, just from the fear of COVID. And the outpouring that I heard last night as they did their presentations, that was something I was able to be part of, and help them do it. And it just started with a phone call with hey, someone from the church gave me your name. And my immediate answer was like, what do you need? And if and even if you just start with that simple, what do you need? And be willing to help, maybe it's the right fit, maybe it's not, but maybe you may be able to give them a little bit of information that will help them, to what they're trying to do. And you never know what's going to come back later. But if you're sincere and you're honest, and if you tell someone you're willing to help, be willing to help. If you can't do something, say you can't do something, or say, hey, I may not be able to help, but I know someone that can. And don't be afraid, to kind of network in that way and actually refer people. Don't feel like you have to hold everything to yourself and do everything to yourself, because most organizations, or small businesses, individuals, it's no one does anything by themselves. And a lot of times you just have to be willing to collaborate, be willing to share, um, and then put in the work, and hold people accountable also, but be willing to put in the work.
Yes, and more you share and more you send people to other experts. If that's not 100% your area of expertise, let someone else do it who is great at it. The more you do that, more comes back to you, because these guys now remember, oh, he sent me so many clients, let me send him some clients, right? So it just always comes back, and there is no, other way than everybody
Exactly right.
rises together, everybody
And it's
wins
and it's
together.
reciprocal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, Jonmichael, you just answered all my questions. I had so many questions for you, as far as like, what advice would you give to someone? And you just answered that perfectly. So, my last question for you is,
Yeah.
what is that
Uh-huh.
gift that you brought to our audience today? I know you have something really fun for them and something really cool.
Yes, what I'm offering is to the lucky winner is an opportunity to actually come on my podcast as a co-host. And what I'll do is show you how kind of the behind the scenes of how I put a show together, from my notes to script to research, and then actually bring you on, and actually you will be announced as a co-host. You'll, contest winner, to give you an opportunity to be a part of a podcast show that you'll be able to share with your family and friends. You'll be able to download it, listen to it. My podcast is available on all the major pod hosts, and players, whether it's Apple, the Apple Podcasts, Google, Google Play, Amazon, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. So it's something that you'd be able to take with you, and I think it's a good experience. Kind of the behind the scenes, and you actually get to be part of the finished product.
Yes. Wow, that's priceless, because as a someone who is starting in the business, if you guys can get on that, if you can position yourself as an expert from the get-go, that's priceless. So thank you so much, Jonmichael, for your generosity, for your time today. That was amazing. We've learned so much from you today, and we wish you the best of luck and amazing, thriving business in front of you.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate the opportunity. And just as a parting thing, you did an amazing job. You should, you don't, sell yourself short on interviewing. One of the things I've learned, the biggest part is to make the guests comfortable, and also, by giving out those questions in advance, it kind of helps people kind of get their mind around what they're going to talk about. Because I'm sure anyone has heard interviews sometime, and maybe someone rambles on. A good host, and this is what I've learned, is kind of, you're the guide, you're the guidepost. You kind of give them, the platform to tell their story. And if they go a little bit far afield, then you're there to kind of steer them back. Or if they forgot something that they were going to talk about, you throw those questions back in. And sometimes those pre-conversations are important too, because it gives you an opportunity as the interviewer to kind of have an idea. Because sometimes people have really good anecdotes and stories, and your job as the interviewer is to kind of sit back and let them go, but kind of give them the guide to go. That's one thing probably growing up, I've learned, and I probably stole this probably from Johnny Carson, David Letterman. Their best interviews were the ones you forgot they were there, and they were just kind of sitting back and just letting them go. Making your guests comfortable, never make them feel like they're on the spot. And then it becomes like a conversation, and you'd be amazed. That's where the magic happens, where stories that people didn't even think they would come out. And people by nature are natural storytellers. You just have to give them the opportunity, and put them in an environment where they can win. And you'll have great interviews all the time by doing that. And people will flock to you and want to come back.
Thank you. Received. Thank you so much. With that said, to all of you who were watching our show, thank you so much. I know we've all learned a ton. We all were hanging out in our group. We still are. We are still going. This is not stopping. Let's let's take it to the whole new level. Let's see what else is possible. Let's see what's out there for every single one of us, and let's see how we can help each other out. Because like Jonmichael pointed out, we have different skills, and we get to benefit from one another's skills. We get to all rise together. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the group. Check your email for the interview and for the free gift. There'll be
Absolutely.
some drawing going on with Jonmichael for that amazing opportunity to be on his podcast. And with that said, thank you so much, and we will see you inside the group.